The air in the opulent New York penthouse dining room was thick with unspoken tension, clinging to the gleaming silverware and the soft glow of the chandelier overhead. Elena sat across from Marcus, her hand absently resting on her 6-month pregnant belly, a silent fortress of life amid the storm between them. Her dark eyes, sharp and perceptive, caught the subtle twitch in his jaw, a telltale sign of the unease he tried to mask. Been distant for weeks, his once affectionate touches replaced by cold silences and averted gazes. Elena sensed the shadow lurking behind it all, Vivian, his ex, who had re-entered their lives like a venomous serpent. Vivian had appeared at Marcus's office months earlier, hoping to seek closure after their messy breakup years ago. Back then, Marcus had chosen Elena over her, leaving Vivian humiliated and resentful. In a quick flashback of memory that Elena pieced together from old conversations, Vivian had been the picture of privilege, accustomed to getting what she wanted through charm and cunning. But Marcus's decision to end things had shattered her ego, fueling a deep-seated grudge that festered over time. She vowed silently to reclaim what she believed was hers, starting with subtle manipulations. Elena had warned Marcus about Vivian's nature, calling her a master of deception who thrived on chaos and control. Yet Marcus, ever the optimist who prided himself on giving people second chances, allowed her to linger in his orbit. Vivian's lies began innocuously, a fabricated text message implying Elena had reconnected with an old flame, followed by a doctored photo showing Elena in a compromising position at a cafe with a stranger. Each piece of evidence was meticulously crafted to erode trust without immediate suspicion. Tonight, the facade crumbled. Marcus pushed his chair back abruptly, the scrape of wood on marble echoing like a thunderclap in the quiet room. His voice, usually warm and commanding, now carried a jagged edge. "I can't do this anymore, Elena." The words hung heavy, slicing through the air. Elena's heart skipped a beat, but she maintained her composure, her chin lifted defiantly. She was no stranger to adversity. Growing up in the bustling streets of Brooklyn had taught her resilience, and she refused to let this moment break her. "What exactly do you mean, Marcus?" she asked, her tone measured, laced with an undercurrent of steel. He met her gaze, his eyes, once filled with the warmth of shared dreams, now iced over with betrayal. "You know what I mean. I've seen the proof, the messages, the pictures. Vivian showed me everything. You've been seeing someone else." The accusation landed like a physical blow, but Elena didn't flinch. Her mind raced to Vivian, the woman who had never forgiven her for stealing Marcus's heart. "There is no one else," she replied firmly. "You're being misled. Those are lies." Marcus let out a bitter laugh, a sound foreign to the man she loved. "Lies? I've got evidence right here." He pulled out his phone, displaying the forged texts and images. Elena leaned forward, her pregnant form a poignant reminder of their intertwined lives. "You're choosing to believe her over me, after all we've built together." Her voice held steady, but inside, cracks formed in her resolve. Marcus's pride, his Achilles heel, formed an impenetrable barrier. "I'm done," he declared. "I want a divorce." The word echoed like a death knell. Elena's breath caught in her throat, the weight of carrying their child amplifying the pain. Nausea from the pregnancy mingled with the emotional turmoil, but she wouldn't crumble. Not here, not now. She had always been the strong anchor in their relationship and drew on that strength. "You're making a grave mistake, Marcus," she said, her eyes locking onto his with fierce intensity. "One day, you'll see the truth haunting you." As she spoke, Elena made a silent vow to protect the unborn child from this chaos. She hadn't fully revealed the pregnancy to him yet, keeping the details vague amid his growing distance. Now, with the marriage fracturing, she decided to shield the baby entirely. If Marcus was so quick to discard their bond based on fabrications, he didn't deserve to know about the life they had created. It was a decision born of self-preservation, not spite, ensuring no messy custody battles or further manipulations from Vivian. Marcus stood, his posture rigid, unwilling to back down. "Pack your things, I'll have the papers drawn up." Elena rose slowly, her hand cradling her belly protectively. She walked toward the door with deliberate steps, her head held high despite the ache tearing through her chest. As she left the dining room, the city's lights twinkled mockingly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder of the vast, impersonal world outside their crumbling sanctuary. In the hallway, Elena paused, leaning against the wall as a wave of emotion threatened to overwhelm her. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away. She thought of her friend Lila, who had always been her confidant, and considered calling her for support. But tonight, she needed solitude to process the betrayal. Marcus's words replayed in her mind, each a dagger twisted by Vivian's hand. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, Marcus poured himself a stiff drink, his hands trembling slightly. Doubt flickered at the edges of his anger, sparked by Elena's unyielding composure. Had he been too hasty? Vivian's assurances had seemed so convincing, but Elena's eyes had held no deception. He pushed the thought aside, drowning it in whiskey, but the seed was planted. Vivian, across town in her lavish apartment, smiled as she sipped champagne. Her plan was unfolding perfectly. Years ago, when Marcus left her for Elena, she had sworn revenge. The humiliation of being second choice had scarred her deeply, turning her ambition into an obsession. She had hacked into old accounts, fabricated evidence with digital precision, all to dismantle their happiness. Tonight marked a victory, but she knew the game wasn't over. Marcus would come crawling back, or so she believed. Elena stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with finality. As it descended, she whispered to her belly, "We'll be okay, little one, just you and me." The city below pulsed with life, indifferent to her pain, but Elena felt a spark of determination ignite within her. She would rebuild, stronger than before, away from the toxicity of doubt and deception. The night air hit her face as she exited the building, cool and bracing. A cab waited at the curb, and she climbed in, directing the driver to a hotel for the night. She would contact a lawyer tomorrow, secure her future, and begin erasing Marcus. But deep down, a part of her wondered if fate had more in store, if this wasn't the end, but a painful detour. As the cab merged into traffic, Elena glanced back at the towering building, a silhouette against the skyline. Marcus stood at the window, watching her depart, a shadow of regret already forming in his expression. The divide between them seemed insurmountable, but the threads of destiny were far from severed. Elena stood in the cramped office of her lawyer, her signature steady, as she signed the divorce papers. The pen felt heavy, each stroke a severance of the life she had built with Marcus. She had chosen a discreet attorney in Brooklyn, one who promised to keep her pregnancy confidential to avoid any legal entanglements. Marcus didn't need to know about the child growing inside her, not after he had believed Vivian's lies without a shred of doubt. The decision to shield her unborn daughter, Sophia, was a fortress Elena built around her heart, a shield against further betrayal. She handed the papers back, her jaw tight, and stepped into the gray drizzle of a New York afternoon, the city's hum starkly contrasting to the silence within her. She had found a small apartment in Brooklyn, a modest one-bedroom with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall. It was a far cry from the penthouse, but it was hers. The nursery corner, barely big enough for a crib, became her sanctuary. She painted it a soft lavender, each brushstroke a promise to Sophia. "You are enough, we are enough." The physical act of painting steadied her, grounding the storm of emotions that threatened to surface. When the city quieted, Elena allowed herself a moment of weakness late at night. She sat on the floor, paint splattered on her hands, and let tears fall. The weight of Marcus's betrayal pressed against her chest, a dull ache that mingled with the nausea of pregnancy. She hadn't told anyone except Lila, her best friend since college, who had offered to come over that first night. Elena had declined, needing to face this solitude alone. But Lila's text now buzzed on her phone. "You okay? I'm here when you need me." Elena typed a quick reply, "Maybe tomorrow," her fingers hesitating before sending. She wasn't ready to voice the hurt, not yet. Across Manhattan, Marcus sat in his now too large penthouse, the silence mocking him. The dining room, where he had demanded the divorce, felt like a tomb. Vivian's messages lit up his phone, her words syrupy and calculated. "Just checking on you, darling. You did the right thing." He ignored them, his mind snagging on Elena's parting words. "You'll regret this." Her voice, fierce and unyielding, echoed in his skull. He poured a whiskey, the burn doing little to quiet the doubt creeping in. Had he been too quick to trust Vivian? The photos, the texts, They had seemed so real, but Elena's eyes, blazing with defiance, hadn't held a trace of guilt. He pushed the thought away, but a splinter lingered in his mind. Vivian was his first love years ago, before her controlling nature drove him away. She had reappeared, claiming she needed closure, but her presence now felt like a trap. He didn't know it yet, but she had intercepted his one attempt to reach out to Elena post-separation, hacking an email account to ensure no communication slipped through. Elena's new routine was a deliberate act of survival. She rose early, navigating morning sickness while sketching designs for her fledgling interior design business. Her talent for transforming spaces had always been her escape. Now it was her lifeline. She took on small projects, friends' apartments, local cafes, pouring her energy into bold colors and clean lines that told stories of resilience. The city's relentless pace mirrored her own determination. She walked through Brooklyn, her hand resting on her belly, feeling Sophia's faint kicks. The ache of Marcus's betrayal lingered, but she refused to let it define her. She was no longer his wife, no longer tethered to his doubts. She was Elena Voss, a woman carving her own path. Lila visited the following evening, bringing takeout and a bottle of sparkling water. They sat on Elena's thrift store couch, the smell of paint still lingering. Lila said, "You're stronger than this," her voice gentle but firm. "You don't need him." Elena nodded, her eyes distant. "I know, but it hurts." Lila, a social worker with a knack for cutting through nonsense, leaned forward. "You're allowed to feel it, Elle, but don't let it stop you. You've got Sophia, and you've got this." She gestured to the half-painted nursery, a symbol of Elena's defiance. The conversation shifted to practicalities, health insurance, single motherhood, but Lila's presence was a balm, a reminder that Elena wasn't alone. Meanwhile, Marcus's doubt grew. Late at night, he scrolled through old photos of him and Elena, laughing at a street fair, dancing at their wedding. Her radiant and unguarded smile contrasted with the woman who had walked out, her head high. Vivian's latest call interrupted his thoughts, her voice dripping with false concern. He cut her off, his tone sharp. "I need space, Vivian." Her pause was brief, but he caught the edge in her reply. "You'll see, I'm the only one who's been honest." He hung up, his chest tight. The seed of doubt had taken root, and he couldn't shake the memory of Elena's strength, her refusal to beg. Elena stood before a small mirror in her apartment, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were tired but fierce, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. She wasn't the naive wife anymore, defined by Marcus's love. She was a mother, a creator, a survivor. But in quiet moments, she wondered if she had been too quick to cut him out. Had he tried to reach her? She dismissed the thought, focusing on Sophia. The city skyline glittered outside, indifferent to her pain, but it also held promise, a canvas for the life she would build. Unable to sleep, Marcus opened his laptop, staring at the forged texts Vivian had sent. Something felt off, the timestamps, the phrasing. He made a mental note to dig deeper, unaware that Vivian's manipulations ran deeper than he could imagine. She had spent years perfecting her revenge, driven by the sting of rejection when Marcus chose Elena. Her apartment, filled with photos of her glamorous life, hid a darker truth, a shrine to her obsession with reclaiming him. Elena set her paintbrush down, the lavender walls nearly complete. She wouldn't tell Marcus about Sophia, not out of spite, but pride. She didn't need his pity or his guilt. She would face the sleepless nights, the doctor's visits, the weight of single motherhood with the same strength that carried her out of his penthouse. As she turned off the light, Sophia's future was her anchor, a light in the darkness of betrayal. Looking at the city from his window, Marcus felt the weight of his mistake. Elena's absence was a void, and Vivian's presence was a chain. He didn't know how, but he would find the truth. And Elena, in her quiet apartment, felt the first stirrings of a new beginning, unaware that fate was already weaving their paths back together. 3 years had passed since the night Elena walked away from Marcus, her heart bruised but unbroken. Now, in a sunlit Brooklyn apartment, she thrived as a single mother and rising star in Manhattan's interior design scene. Her company, Voss Designs, had grown from small gigs to coveted contracts, her bold aesthetic transforming spaces into stories of resilience. Her daughter, Sophia, now 3, was a whirlwind of curls and laughter, her cedarwood eyes a silent echo of Marcus. Yet, Sophia's recent diagnosis of mild asthma added a layer of worry to Elena's days. Each wheeze during a playdate tightened her chest, a reminder of the weight she carried alone. She guarded Sophia fiercely, never mentioning Marcus, whose name remained a locked door in her heart. Elena's mornings began with coffee and sketches, and her dining table was a chaos of blueprints and fabric swatches. Today, she prepared for a high-profile meeting, a luxury hotel redesign in Manhattan, a project that could cement her reputation. She dressed in a tailored navy blazer, her auburn hair swept into a sleek bun, exuding a quiet command. Sophia, clutching a stuffed rabbit, chattered about painting with Mama. Elena kissed her forehead, leaving her with Lila, her rock and confidant, who had become family. "Be good, my light," Elena whispered, her heart swelling at Sophia's sleepy smile. The city's pulse carried her to Manhattan, her portfolio under her arm, unaware that fate was about to intervene. Across town, Marcus navigated his own world, now a prominent financier with a corner office overlooking Central Park. The penthouse felt emptier each day, and Vivienne's calls were persistent hums that he increasingly ignored. Her manipulations had cost him Elena, and the regret gnawed at him. He had tried to find her once, a year after the divorce, sending an email that never got a reply. Vivienne's interception, though he didn't know it. Now, he was a silent partner in the hotel project, drawn to its prestige but unaware of Elena's involvement. His assistant mentioned the designer's name, Voss, but it didn't register. He entered the sleek conference room, his suit crisp, expecting a routine meeting. Elena strode into the room, her presence magnetic, her portfolio a testament to her vision. The developer, a jovial man with silver hair, greeted her warmly. Then she saw him, Marcus, by the window, his broad frame turning slowly. Their eyes locked, and time folded in on itself. His face, etched with new lines of weariness, registered shock, then something raw and unguarded. Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression calm, her chin lifting slightly. She wouldn't falter, not after building a life without him. "Marcus," she said, her voice crisp and professional, "I didn't expect you here." The developer, oblivious to the undercurrent, explained Marcus's financial role, insisting they meet the designer personally. The air thickened as they sat, Elena presenting her vision. Sweeping arches, warm textures, a lobby that breathed elegance and strength. Her voice was steady, her gestures precise, commanding the room. Marcus listened, his gaze fixed on her, not the slides. He saw the woman she had become, radiant, untouchable, no longer the wife he had accused. Her transformation stirred him, unraveling the pride that had blinded him. Elena felt his stare, heavy with unspoken questions, but she focused on her work, refusing to let his presence shake her. The room shrank to just them when the developer stepped out for a call. Elena gathered her papers, her movements deliberate, ignoring the weight of his gaze. "You've changed," Marcus said, his voice soft, almost reverent. She met his eyes, unflinching. "I had to," she replied, her words sharp but calm. "Life doesn't wait for apologies." His lips parted, but no words came. She saw the flicker of regret, the same doubt that had haunted him years ago, but she wouldn't soften. "This is business, Marcus. Let's keep it that way." Her voice was ice, but her heart thudded, memories of their love clashing with the pain of his betrayal. Marcus stepped closer, his presence still commanding, but tempered with a humility she didn't recognize. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said, almost to himself. "But I'm glad you are." Elena didn't respond. Her silence was a wall. As she walked out, her heels clicking against the marble, she felt his eyes on her, heavy with unspoken words. Back at her apartment, Sophia ran to her, arms wide, and Elena scooped her up, burying her face in her daughter's curls. Marcus's return was a crack in her carefully built world, but she wouldn't let it break her. She'd face him as the woman she'd become, not the one he'd hurt. Marcus stared at the city skyline in his office, Elena's presence lingering like a ghost. Her grace, her fire, mirrored his failures. He pulled up her portfolio online. Her designs are a testament to her resilience. A photo caught his eye. Elena at a charity event, a toddler on her hip, her eyes mirroring his own. His breath caught. Was it possible? He hadn't known, hadn't suspected. The thought of Elena raising their child alone cut deeper than Vivian's lies. He wanted to reach out, to ask, but her words echoed, "This is business." She'd drawn a line, and he wasn't sure he could cross it. Elena, meanwhile, sat with Sophia, reading a bedtime story. Her daughter's laughter was a balm, but Marcus's face lingered in her mind, his voice softer than she remembered. She wouldn't tell him about Sophia, not yet. He'd have to earn that truth. As she closed Sophia's door, she leaned against it, her resolve ironclad. Trouble was coming. Vivian's shadow loomed, and Marcus's return stirred dangerous hope. But Elena was ready, her strength forged in solitude. Across town, Vivian sat in her sleek apartment, her phone buzzing with a message from a contact at the hotel project. Elena's involvement was no coincidence. Vivian had learned of it, and ensured Marcus was there, hoping to unsettle them both. Her plan to reclaim him wasn't over. She poured a glass of wine, her smile sharp. Elena might have risen from the ashes, but Vivian thrived in chaos. The game was far from finished, and she intended to play it to the end. Elena's sketches lay spread across her table, the hotel project demanding her focus. But Marcus's cedarwood eyes, mirrored in Sophia's, haunted her. She pushed the thought aside, gripping her pencil. She had built a life without him. No fleeting glance would unravel it. Yet, as the city's lights glittered outside, she felt the stirrings of fate, pulling her toward a reckoning she couldn't predict. The conference room on the 45th floor of the sleek Midtown Tower overlooked the sprawling chaos of Manhattan, where taxis honked like impatient geese and pedestrians surged in endless waves below. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp angles across the polished mahogany table where blueprints and mood boards lay scattered like the remnants of a brainstorm gone wild. Elena arrived early, as always, her heels clicking with purposeful rhythm on the marble floor. She smoothed her navy pencil skirt, adjusted the silk blouse that hugged her frame just enough to command respect without distraction, and meticulously arranged her portfolio. At 32, she had learned to wield professionalism like a shield, especially in rooms filled with men who still mistook confidence for flirtation. This meeting was a milestone for her firm. The luxury hotel project, a glittering addition to the skyline, promised to catapult her from niche designer to industry name. She had poured late nights into the proposal, blending modern minimalism with nods to the city's gritty soul. Exposed brick accents softened by velvet lounges, chandeliers that dripped like frozen rain. Her team filtered in behind her, laptops humming, coffee steaming. Lila, her steadfast friend and occasional collaborator, shot her a thumbs up from across the table. "You've got this, Elena. Show them why you're the queen of concrete jungles." Elena managed to smile, but her stomach twisted with the familiar knot of anticipation. She hadn't slept well, haunted by dreams of blue eyes and whispered accusations from a life she had buried deep. 3 years had hardened her edges, but the city had a way of unearthing ghosts, especially when deals like this loomed. The door swung open and the clients entered, a cluster of suits from the development firm, murmuring about timelines and budgets. The project's financial backer led them, a name that had appeared in emails but never a face. Marcus Hale. Time fractured. Elena froze, her pen hovering mid-air over her notes. There he stood, filling the doorway with that effortless presence she remembered too well. Taller than she recalled, or perhaps it was the way the light haloed his broad shoulders, his dark hair swept back just so, those piercing blue eyes scanning the room until they locked on hers. The air thickened, charged with the static of unspoken history. He stopped dead, color draining from his face as recognition hit like a freight train. Elena. His voice was a low rumble, barely audible over the shuffle of chairs. The room fell into an awkward hush, all eyes darting between them. Elena forced her lips into a neutral line, her heart slamming against her ribs like a caged bird. She had known this was possible, had even braced for it when his company's name surfaced in the bids. But theory and reality were worlds apart. "Mr. Hale," she said evenly, extending her hand across the table. "Elena Vasquez, thank you for this opportunity." He crossed the space in 2 strides, his palm enveloping hers in a grip that lingered a fraction too long, warm and calloused from whatever battles he had fought in the interim. The contact sent a jolt up her arm, memories flooding unbidden. Lazy Sundays tangled in sheets, his laughter vibrating against her skin. He released her hand abruptly as if burned and took his seat at the head of the table. The meeting lurched forward, voices overlapping in a blur of projections and palettes. Elena dove into her presentation, her voice steady as she gestured to the portfolio, flipping pages with practiced grace. Sustainable materials here, adaptive lighting there. Her team nodded along, the clients leaned in, impressed murmurs rippling through. But Marcus was a distraction she couldn't afford. He sat unnaturally still, his gaze fixed on her like a laser, tracing the curve of her jaw, the way her fingers danced over the images. When she reached the personal section, a deliberate touch to humanize her designs, she hesitated. There, nestled among sketches of lounge layouts, was the photo. Sophia at 2, grinning toothily beside a cardboard fort, her tiny hands smeared with paint. Those eyes, so unmistakably his, stared out innocently from the page. Elena had agonized over including it, a risk for authenticity in a cutthroat field. Now, it felt like a betrayal. Marcus leaned forward, his chair creaking under the shift. "That little girl in the photo," he said, his tone deceptively casual, interrupting her flow on upholstery swatches. "She looks familiar. Who's the artist behind the fort?" The question hung, innocuous to the others but loaded for her. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. She closed the portfolio with a soft snap, meeting his eyes without flinching. "My daughter, Sophia. She's 3 now, and quite the little architect in training. But let's focus on the atrium design, shall we?" She steered back to the board, detailing the integration of green walls, her words a lifeline pulling her from the undertow. The rest of the meeting passed in a haze. Questions fired, approvals tentatively granted, handshakes exchanged. As the group dispersed, Marcus lingered, pretending to review a spec sheet while the room emptied. Elena gathered her things methodically, Lila casting her a sympathetic glance before slipping out with a whispered text. "Later, call me." The door clicked shut, leaving them alone amid the echo of forgotten coffee cups. "Elena." He said her name like a prayer and a curse, rising to block her path. "We can't just pretend." "Pretend what?" She arched a brow, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Are you funding my most significant break, or that the last time we spoke, you accused me of infidelity and demanded divorce papers by dawn?" His jaw tightened, regret etching deeper lines around his mouth. "I was wrong, blinded. But seeing you here, after all this time, it's like fate throwing us back together. And that photo, Sophia, she has my eyes." Elena's breath hitched, but she schooled her features into ice. You don't get to claim pieces of her life you walked away from. I changed her last name at birth, kept everything off the grid. No social media trails, no mutual friends spilling secrets. It was the only way to protect her from your world, from the mess you left behind." Marcus recoiled as if slapped, his hand raking through his hair. "Protect her from me? Elena, I thought you'd moved on, started over. I searched, you know, hired people after the divorce, when the anger faded. But you vanished. New name, new address. It was like you erased us." "Erased?" She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp in the empty room. "You erased us first, Marcus. With those lies, Vivienne fed you. I built this life brick by brick, alone. Sophia's doctor visits, bedtime stories, and how she clings to me during thunderstorms. That's mine. Ours is just a signature on faded paper." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray at his temples, the wear of years without her. "I regret it every day, the blindness, the haste. Vivienne, she's still around, whispering doubts. But I've cut ties. Mostly. This project is not a coincidence. I pulled strings to back it when I saw your firm's bid. I needed to see you and apologize properly. The admission hung between them, a thread of vulnerability she hadn't expected. Elena's resolve wavered, her mind flashing to Sophia that morning, braiding her hair with clumsy fingers, asking why Mommy worked so hard. To give you the world, baby, the one you deserve. But here was Marcus, offering a glimpse of the world they might have shared. Professional boundaries, she said, finally, her voice softer than intended. Well, collaborate on the project. Ideas, approvals, deadlines. But personal, that's off limits for now. He nodded, though his eyes pleaded for more. Fair enough, but Elena, do you ever need anything for the project, or otherwise? I'm here. She brushed past him, the scent of his cologne a ghost on the air, and pushed through the door into the hallway. The elevator ride down was a blur, the city rising to meet her like an old friend with sharp edges. Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the lobby, a message from Marcus. Saw the photo. She's beautiful, just like her mother. Delete if you must, but no, I see her now. Elena's thumb hovered over the screen, a war raging inside. She typed a terse and accurate reply. Don't make me regret this collaboration. Then hit send, pocketing the phone as she hailed a cab. Back in her Brooklyn walk-up that evening, the apartment felt smaller, the walls closing with the day's weight. Sophia was already down, her chest rising and falling in the glow of a nightlight, a stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. Elena sank onto the couch, kicking off her heels, and poured a glass of wine that tasted like regret. Lila arrived unannounced, bearing Thai takeout and zero patience for stoicism. Spill, her friend demanded, plating pad CU with the efficiency of a therapist armed with noodles. You looked like you'd seen a ghost when I left that room. Worse, my ghost. Elena recounted the meeting, the photo slip, and the charged standoff. He's funding it all, Lila. And he knows about Sophia. Lila's eyes widened, fork pausing midair. Holy plot twist. What did you say? Kept it cool. But inside, chaos. He searched for me, apparently. Vivienne must have buried it deep. That woman. Lila shook her head, scrolling her phone absent-mindedly. Speaking of, check this. She turned the screen. A screenshot of a text Marcus had forwarded in a moment of weakness, or perhaps strategy. Vivienne, gloating, heard you ran into the ex. Careful, darling. She's playing the long game. Elena snatched the phone, reading the thread. Marcus had shut it down curtly. Stay out of it. But the damage lingered, a reminder that shadows didn't vanish easily. He's texting me about the photo, she admitted, and is handing it back. Says she's beautiful. Of course she is. Lila softened, squeezing her hand. Look, you're a fortress, Elena. But fortresses need gates sometimes. For Sophia's sake, crack one open. Just don't let him storm it. Elena nodded, the advice settling like sediment in her chest. Later, as she tucked the covers around her daughter, Sophia's sleepy murmur cut through the quiet. Mommy, did you build castles today? The best kind, sweetheart. Elena kissed her forehead, the warmth chasing away the chill. Ones that stand tall no matter the storms. Across the river, in his penthouse overlooking the same glittering expanse, Marcus paced the length of his living room, the city's pulse mocking his own erratic beat. The portfolio lay open on the coffee table, Sophia's image staring up at him like an accusation and a gift. Those eyes, his eyes, in a face he had never held. Regret surged, hot and unrelenting, a tide pulling him under. He had lost years, but perhaps this was the universe's cruel mercy, a second act, if he could prove worthy. He drafted another message, then deleted it. Words were cheap, actions were the currency she demanded. Tomorrow, at the site walkthrough, he would start. Subtle support, sharp insights, no pressure. For the project, for them, for the daughter he already loved from afar. As night cloaked the skyline, Elena lay awake, the unexpected encounter replaying in loops. Her heart raced still, not just from shock, but from the treacherous spark of possibility. The city never slept, nor would she, until she mapped the path forward, alone, for now, but with echoes of what might be. The Manhattan hotel site buzzed with activity, workers hammering beams into place under the morning sun. Elena arrived early, her portfolio tucked under her arm, her black trousers and silk blouse a sharp contrast to the construction dust. Her mind was sharp and focused on the project, but Marcus's unexpected presence at the last meeting lingered like an unwelcome guest. She adjusted a blueprint on a makeshift table, directing a worker to reposition a light fixture. Her vision for the hotel was bold, a blend of elegance and warmth, and she wouldn't let personal turmoil derail it. Sophia's recent asthma flare-up weighed on her, but Elena pushed forward, her strength a shield against vulnerability. The developer, Mr. Grayson, greeted her with a warm nod, praising her latest sketches. Elena smiled, her confidence unwavering, but her gaze caught a figure at the entrance. Vivian. Her platinum hair gleamed under the sunlight, her red dress clinging to her frame like a second skin. She sauntered, her smile sharp and predatory, as if she owned the space. Elena's pulse quickened, but she stood taller, her expression cool. Vivian's presence wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated move, a continuation of the chaos she had sown 3 years ago. Elena had learned of Vivian's past from Lila, who had dug into old social circles. Vivian's humiliation when Marcus chose Elena had fueled a vendetta, her charm masking a need for control. Vivian made a beeline for Marcus, who entered moments later, his suit crisp, his face unreadable. A flicker of unease crossed his features when he saw her, but he masked it quickly, nodding to Grayson. Vivian's hand brushed his arm, her voice honeyed. "Marcus, darling, I thought I'd see your little project." Her eyes darted to Elena, gleaming with challenge. Elena didn't flinch, her gaze locking onto Vivian's with quiet defiance. She saw the game for what it was. Vivian testing her hold on Marcus, confident she could still pull his strings. Elena's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. She wasn't the naive wife anymore. Grayson began discussing timelines and gesturing to the half-built lobby, oblivious to the tension. Elena presented her updated designs, her voice steady, her focus razor-sharp. She spoke of textures that invited touch, light that softened edges, and a space that would feel like a sanctuary. Marcus listened intently, his eyes on her, not Vivian, who hovered like a vulture. When Elena finished, Grayson clapped, impressed. Vivian seized the moment, leaning closer to Marcus, her voice loud enough for Elena to hear. "You always had a knack for picking talent, Marcus. However, some people don't know when to step aside." The jab was apparent, aimed at Elena's presence and success. Elena's response was swift, her voice clear and cutting. "Some people think they can rewrite truth to suit themselves, Vivian. But lies crumble under scrutiny." Vivian's smile faltered for a moment, a crack in her polished facade. Marcus's head snapped toward Elena, her words striking a nerve. Vivian recovered quickly, laughing lightly. "Oh, Elena, always so dramatic. Marcus knows who's been honest with him." She touched his shoulder, possessively, but Marcus stepped away, his expression unreadable. Sensing the awkwardness, Grayson suggested a site tour to shift focus. As they walked through the skeleton of the lobby, Vivian stayed close to Marcus, her voice a constant hum of flattery and insinuation. Elena kept her distance, her attention on the work, but she felt Marcus's gaze heavy with questions. At one point, Vivian brushed against Elena, her elbow grazing her arm. "Oops," Vivian said, her tone mock-apologetic. Elena met her eyes, unflinching. "Careful," she said softly, her voice laced with steel. "You wouldn't want to trip over your own schemes." Vivian's eyes flashed, but she said nothing, her confidence shaken. Elena felt a surge of power. She saw through Vivian's mask and wouldn't be rattled. Marcus, watching the exchange, frowned. The doubt that had been simmering since the divorce resurfaced. Had Vivian played him all along? Elena's unshakable, calm strength held his attention more than Vivian's calculated charm. She moved through the site gracefully, her suggestions sharp, her presence commanding. She was no longer the woman he'd accused. She was more, a force he couldn't ignore. As the tour ended, Vivian lingered, her hand on Marcus's arm again. "Dinner tonight?" she asked, her voice low, intimate. Marcus hesitated, his eyes flicking to Elena, who was packing her things, her back straight, her focus unwavering. "I have plans," he said curtly, stepping away. Vivian's smile tightened, but she didn't push. Elena caught the exchange, her heart steady. She told herself she didn't care what Marcus did, but a flicker of satisfaction sparked within her. She wouldn't let Vivian's games unsettle her. Back at her apartment, Sophia greeted her with a hug, her tiny arms a reminder of what mattered most. "Mama strong," Sophia mumbled, half asleep. Elena smiled, her chest tight. "Always, my light," she whispered. But as she tucked Sophia into bed, Vivian's presence lingered like a storm cloud. The woman was a threat, not just to her peace, but to the life she'd built. Across town, Marcus sat alone in his office, the city skyline a blur beyond his window. Vivian's touch had felt wrong, her words hollow. Elena's strength, her defiance in the face of Vivian's taunts, had stirred something in him, regret, yes, but also admiration. He pulled up Elena's portfolio again. Her designs are a testament to her resilience. The photo of her with Sophia haunted him, the child's eyes unmistakably his. He needed answers, but Elena's walls were high, and Vivian's once convincing lies now felt like sand slipping through his fingers. Elena sat at her dining table, sketching new designs, her mind sharp despite the day's tension. Vivian thought she could control Marcus, but Elena saw the cracks in her facade. And Marcus, his hesitation today, the way he'd pulled away from Vivian, suggested he wasn't as blind as he'd once been. She set her pencil down, her fingers brushing the locket at her neck, a gift from her mother. "You're stronger than your pain," her mother's voice echoed. Elena nodded to herself, her resolve firm. Vivian's games wouldn't break her, and Marcus's return wouldn't unravel her. She was ready for whatever came next, her strength a beacon in the chaos. Elena stood in her Brooklyn apartment, the soft hum of the city filtering through the window, as she rocked Sophia gently. Her daughter's breathing was steady now. The asthma episode from earlier that day had calmed with a nebulizer. The scare had shaken Elena, a reminder of her solitary responsibility, but it also steeled her resolve. She wouldn't let Vivian's intrusion at the hotel site, or Marcus's unexpected return, derail the life she'd built. Her sketches for the hotel project lay scattered on the table, a testament to her focus. But her mind replayed the confrontation with Vivian, the woman's smug smile. Her calculated touch on Marcus's arm had ignited a fire in Elena. She wasn't fighting for Marcus, she was fighting for her peace. Across Manhattan, Marcus sat in his office, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on his face. The photo of Elena with Sophia lingered in his mind, the child's cedarwood eyes mirroring his own. Doubt had taken root, gnawing at the certainty he'd once felt about Vivian's evidence. 3 years ago, her texts and photos had seemed ironclad, but Elena's defiance at the sight, her unshakable calm, made him question everything. He contacted a digital forensics expert, a contact from past business deals, and sent over the old messages. "Trace these," he said, his voice low. "I need to know if they're real." The investigator promised results within days, and Marcus leaned back, his chest tight with anticipation and dread. Elena's morning began with a call from Lila, who sensed her tension. "You saw her, didn't you, Vivian?" Lila asked. Elena nodded, though Lila couldn't see. "She's playing the same game, Lila." "But I'm not the same woman." Lila, ever the pragmatist, urged caution. "Don't let her pull you into her chaos. Focus on Sophia, on your work." Elena agreed, but her thoughts drifted to Marcus as she hung up. His hesitation at the sight, the way he'd stepped away from Vivian, stirred something dangerous, hope. She hated it. She'd rebuilt her life without him, yet his gaze had felt like a key turning in a long-locked door. Elena threw herself into work at the hotel site, directing workers on placing marble tiles. The lobby was taking shape, her vision of warmth and elegance coming to life. Marcus arrived, his presence a quiet storm. He reviewed budgets, his focus intense, but his eyes flicked to Elena often. She ignored it, her voice crisp as she addressed a contractor. But when their hands brushed over a blueprint, the contact sent a jolt through her. She stepped back, her heart racing, and redirected her attention to the task. Marcus didn't push, but his quiet support, handing her a coffee, anticipating her needs, felt like a silent apology. Sophia's cough returned that evening, and Elena rushed her to the pediatrician. The doctor adjusted her medication, reassuring Elena, but the weight of single motherhood pressed harder. Back home, she tucked Sophia into bed, her daughter's tiny hand clutching hers. "Mama strong," Sophia whispered, her eyes heavy. Elena smiled, her throat tight. "Always my light." But as she closed the door, exhaustion hit. She called Lila, who arrived with wine and empathy. "You're carrying too much alone," Lila said. "Let me help." Elena nodded, her guard softening. She didn't mention Marcus, but Lila sensed the unspoken turmoil. "He's back in your head, isn't he?" Lila asked. Elena didn't answer, her silence telling. Marcus, meanwhile, received a call from the investigator. The texts from 3 years ago were sent from a burner phone, routed through a fake account. The photos were edited, faces swapped, timestamps altered. Whoever did this knew their craft, the investigator said. Marcus's blood ran cold. Vivian. He thanked the investigator, his hands shaking as he hung up. The truth was a flood, drowning his anger, leaving only guilt. He had destroyed his marriage, cast Elena aside for lies. He paced his office, the city's lights a blur. He needed to see her, to beg forgiveness, but her words at the sight, "This is business," echoed, a barrier he wasn't sure he could breach. Elena arrived at the site the next morning, her portfolio ready, her demeanor unshakable despite the sleepless night. She expected Marcus's role as financier to make his presence inevitable, but she hadn't anticipated Vivian's next move. A worker approached, hesitant, reporting a mix-up with the tile order. Elena's jaw tightened, her designs were precise, and such errors were rare. She demanded details, her voice steady. The worker admitted a woman had called, claiming to represent Elena, ordering cheaper tiles. Elena's blood ran cold. "Vivian." Marcus overheard, his expression darkening. He stepped closer, his voice low. "This ends now." Elena met his eyes, a silent agreement forming. They would face her together, but first, Marcus needed to confront his past. He called Vivian, his tone cold. "Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk." Vivian's voice was smooth and confident. "Of course, darling, I'm always here." He hung up, his resolve hardening. Elena's strength at the sight, her defiance against Vivian's games, had cracked something open in him. He wouldn't be a fool again. At her apartment, Elena sat with Sophia, reading a bedtime story. Her daughter's laughter was a balm, but the threat of Vivian loomed. She wouldn't let that woman steal her peace again. She sketched late into the night, her lines sharp, reflecting her resolve. Marcus's hesitation, his pull away from Vivian, suggested he was waking up. But trust was a bridge she wasn't ready to cross. Marcus sat alone, the investigator's report open on his laptop. The evidence was damning, a web of lies spun with precision. He thought of Elena, pregnant and alone, facing his betrayal with unwavering strength. The realization that Sophia was his daughter hit like a blow. He wanted to know her and make amends. But Elena's walls were iron. He closed his laptop, his mind fixed on her fire, her grace. Vivian's schemes had cost him everything. He would face her tomorrow. But tonight, he felt the weight of his mistakes and the faint hope that Elena might let him back in. Elena's pencil scratched across her sketchpad, the hotel's lobby taking shape. She wouldn't tell Marcus about Sophia's asthma, not yet. He didn't deserve that truth. But as she worked, a small part of her wondered if his doubt meant something. She pushed it aside, her heart guarded. The city outside her window pulsed, a reminder of the life she'd built. Vivian could scheme, Marcus could return, but Elena was her anchor, and no one would take that from her. The hotel site stood quiet under the late afternoon sun, its skeletal frame casting long shadows across the Manhattan pavement. Elena adjusted a sample fabric against a half-finished wall, her focus razor-sharp, despite the weight of Sophia's recent asthma scare. Her daughter was stable now, resting with Lila, but the fear lingered, a quiet pulse beneath Elena's composed exterior. She wore a tailored gray blazer, her auburn hair pulled back, and every detail was deliberate to project control. Marcus's presence at the site, now a daily constant, was a current she navigated carefully. His financier role forced their proximity, but his quiet gestures, handing her a blueprint, anticipating a contractor's question, chipped at her defenses. Marcus arrived, his suit sharp but his eyes heavy with something unspoken. The investigator's report burned in his mind. Vivian's meticulously crafted lies had unraveled his marriage. He had spent the morning staring at the forged texts, the altered photos, each a dagger of guilt. Pregnant and alone, Elena faced his betrayal with a strength he hadn't deserved. Now, watching her direct a worker with calm precision, he saw the woman she'd become, fierce, radiant, untouchable. He needed to make this right, not just for her, but for the daughter he hadn't known existed. Elena sensed him before she saw him, his presence filling the space like a gathering storm. She turned, her tape measure snapping back, her expression guarded. "Marcus," she said, her voice cool, "what do you want?" He stepped closer, his eyes raw, unguarded. "I know the truth," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "About Vivian, the texts and the photos were fake. She lied, Elena, I was wrong." Her heart stuttered, the words she'd waited 3 years to hear landing like a stone. But she didn't soften. "You believed her," she said, her voice low, steady. "You didn't even ask me. You threw me away." Marcus flinched, his hands clenching at his sides. "I know," he said. "I was blind, proud. I let her poison me, but I see it now, and I'm sorry. God, Elena, I'm so sorry." His voice cracked, raw with regret. But Elena held her ground, her eyes blazing. "Sorry doesn't undo it," she said. "I was pregnant, Marcus, alone. You don't get to walk back in and fix that with words." His face paled, the confirmation of Sophia's existence hitting like a blow. "She's mine," he whispered, not a question. Elena's silence was answer enough. She returned to her work, her hands steady despite the storm inside. "You don't get to claim her now," she said, her voice sharp. "You lost that right." Marcus stepped closer, his voice low, desperate. "I know I failed you, both of you, but I want to make this right. Please, Elena, give me a chance." Her chest tightened, his sincerity a crack in her armor. She remembered his laugh, his touch, the man he'd been before Vivian's lies. But she also remembered the divorce papers, the coldness in his eyes. "A chance," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is it that simple? I built a life without you. Sophia doesn't know you. I don't know if I can trust you." Marcus nodded, his eyes pained but resolute. "I'll prove it," he said, "not with words, with actions. I'll do whatever it takes." Elena's throat burned, the weight of his regret clashing with her protectiveness. She turned away, resuming her measurements, the tape measures snap a punctuation to her resolve. Marcus watched her, his guilt a weight he couldn't shake. He wanted to reach for her, to pull her close, but her walls were iron. As he left the site, the city's lights blurred before him, his mind fixed on Elena's fire, her strength. Elena tucked Sophia into bed at her apartment, her daughter's tiny hand clutching hers. "Mama sad?" Sophia asked, her cedarwood eyes wide. Elena smiled, brushing a curl from her face. "Mama's strong," she said, echoing Sophia's earlier words. But as she turned off the light, Marcus's apology lingered, a spark in the darkness. She didn't trust it, not yet. She sat at her dining table sketching, her lines sharper than usual, reflecting the edges of her heart. Sophia's asthma weighed on her, the doctor's bills were strained. She hadn't told Marcus about it, and she wouldn't, not until he proved himself. Marcus, in his penthouse, poured a whiskey he didn't drink. Elena's words echoed, "You threw me away." He opened his laptop, pulling up the investigator's report again. The evidence was damning. Vivian's burner phones, her hacked accounts. He thought of Sophia, a child he'd never met, raised by Elena's strength alone. The realization cut deeper than any lie. He texted his lawyer asking about legal steps against Vivian. She wouldn't manipulate him again. But his focus was Elena, her grace under pressure, her refusal to crumble. He vowed to show her he was different. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "How's the site? Marcus in trouble?" Elena hesitated, then replied, "He's trying. Too soon to tell." Lila's response was quick. "Protect your heart, Elle. You're enough." Elena nodded to herself, her resolve firm. She wouldn't let Marcus's return unravel her, but as she sketched, a memory surfaced. Marcus laughing with her at a Brooklyn street fair, his arm around her, their future bright. She pushed it down, focusing on the present. Sophia's health, the hotel project, her strength, these were her anchors. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the site early, with a coffee for Elena, her favorite, chamomile, with a hint of honey. He set it beside her without a word, his presence steady but unintrusive. Elena glanced at it, her lips tightening, but she took a sip, the gesture softening her edges. They worked side by side, reviewing blueprints, their movements a careful dance. When a worker botched a measurement, Marcus stepped in, his tone calm but firm, ensuring Elena's vision wasn't compromised. She noticed her heart warring with her caution. As the day ended, Elena packed her things, with Marcus lingering nearby. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "I'm here for you, for Sophia." She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Prove it," she said, her voice soft but firm. He nodded, his eyes fervent, and she walked away, the coffee's warmth lingering in her hand. The city's pulse throbbed around her, but inside, a spark of possibility flickered, fragile but undeniable. Vivian's shadow loomed, but Elena felt stronger, ready for whatever came next. The construction site pulsed with the midday frenzy of Manhattan, cranes groaning like weary giants as they hoisted steel girders into place. Dust motes danced in the slanted sunlight, and the air carried the sharp tang of fresh concrete, mixed with the distant hum of traffic from the streets below. Elena moved through the chaos with focused grace, her hard hat tilted just so, clipboard in hand, as she directed a team of carpenters on the lobby installations. Velvet panels were draped over test frames, their rich burgundy folds catching the light in ways that promised elegance once the dust settled. She had refined the design overnight, incorporating feedback from the last walkthrough, her mind a whirlwind of measurements and moods. 3 weeks into the collaboration, the project hummed with unexpected harmony. Marcus had kept his word, his presence a steady undercurrent rather than an overwhelming tide. He arrived daily around noon, sleeves rolled up, offering insights that sharpened her visions without overshadowing them. Yesterday, he had suggested a subtle shift in the chandelier placements, arguing it would better capture the evening glow from the Hudson. She had nodded, impressed despite herself, and the adjustment elevated the whole atrium concept. It was professional, almost seamless, but beneath the surface, currents stirred that she dared not name. As the lunch break approached, Elena wiped sweat from her brow and glanced at her watch. Her stomach growled, a reminder that she had skipped breakfast amid a dawn call with suppliers. She turned toward the temporary canteen tent, where workers clustered around folding tables laden with sandwiches and thermoses. Before she could take 2 steps, a familiar voice cut through the din. "Elena, wait up." She paused, turning to find Marcus approaching, a paper bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. His shirt clung slightly to his frame from the heat, dark hair tousled by the wind whipping through the open structure. He held out the bag with a tentative smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You might need this. Your favorite falafel wrap from that spot on Lexington. Extra tahini, no onions." She stared at the offering, a flicker of surprise softening her guarded expression. How did you remember that? It had been years since she mentioned going to lunch, a detail from lazy afternoons in their old kitchen. Did I forget the way your face lit up over it? He shrugged, casual but earnest. Saw the truck on my way in, figured it was a sign. Elena accepted the bag, their fingers brushing in the exchange, a fleeting warmth that lingered like an echo. "Thank you," she said, her voice measured. "That's thoughtful." She unwrapped it right there, the scent of spiced chickpeas wafting up, and took a bite to steady herself. The flavors burst, familiar and comforting, a small anchor in the shifting sands of their interactions. They stepped toward the tent, the conversation drifting to safer waters, progress on the bar counter quartz, delays with the custom millwork. Marcus listened intently, nodding at her concerns about lead times, then offered a contact from his network who could expedite shipments. "It's no trouble," he added when she hesitated. "I've got pull with these guys, let me handle it." She appreciated the gesture he supported without smothering, but it chipped at her resolve. Each small act built a bridge she had sworn to burn, reminding her of the man he had been before doubt poisoned them. As they sat at a corner table, away from the crew's banter, Elena felt the old pull, that magnetic draw toward his quiet strength. Her gaze lingered on the line of his jaw as he sipped coffee, the way his hands moved with purposeful grace. "Stop it," she chided inwardly. "He's not yours anymore. He's a client, a complication, the father of your child who vanished when you needed him most." Across town, in the shadowed cool of her Upper East Side office, Vivian scrolled through emails with manicured nails tapping impatiently. The city's elite buzzed around her, but she felt the isolation keenly, a queen dethroned in her own court. Reports from her discreet sources painted a picture she loathed. Marcus and Elena, orbiting closer with each passing day on that infernal hotel site. She had watched from afar, her sleek black SUV idling across the street one afternoon, binoculars trained on their shared laughter over blueprints. It burned, that easy camaraderie, a reminder of what she had schemed to steal and now risked losing. Vivian leaned back in her leather chair, her reflection in the window a mask of calculated poise. Blonde waves framed a face that turned heads, but the old wound festered inside. Marcus had chosen Elena once and discarded her like yesterday's trend after she dared to bare her soul. The rejection had forged her into this, a woman who wielded influence like a blade. She couldn't let history repeat. Her fingers danced over her keyboard, drafting an anonymous tip to the project's lead contractor about subpar materials in Elena's specs. A whisper of doubt, a nudge toward chaos. It would unravel them, force Marcus to see the fragility of his ex-wife's empire. She hit send, a serpent smile curving her lips. "Patience," she murmured to the empty room. "They'll crumble soon enough." Back at the site, the afternoon wore on with relentless pace. Elena oversaw the installation of sample lighting fixtures, climbing a scaffold for a better view, her mind half on the wiring diagram, half on the man who shadowed her every decision. Marcus had joined the electrician's crew, handing up tools without being asked, and his suggestions on dimmer placements proved spot on. She admitted you have an eye for this as they descended, the scaffold creaking under their combined weight. "Like you always did. Old habits," he replied, his tone light but laced with something more profound. "We made a good team once. We will still do so if you let us know." The words hung, unspoken invitation threading through them. Elena busied herself with notes, but her pulse quickened, the proximity stirring memories she had locked away. His arm brushed hers as they navigated a narrow walkway lined with stacked tiles, the contact electric, unintended but charged. She froze, the world narrowing to that point of connection, heat blooming where skin met fabric. Time stretched, the site's clamor fading to a distant roar. Marcus pulled back first, his breath catching. "Sorry," he said, voice rough. "Didn't mean to." "It's fine," she whispered, but it wasn't. The touch ignited a spark, fanning embers she thought long, cold. Her skin tingled, traitorous longing coiling low in her belly. She stepped away, heart hammering, and excused herself to the trailer for a moment of air. Inside, she leaned against the door, eyes closing as she fought the tide. Why now? Why him? The attraction was a live wire, dangerous and undeniable. But trust was a shattered vase, pieces too jagged to reassemble. Sophia deserved stability, not this whirlwind of what-ifs. And yet, the pull was there, whispering of second chances in the quiet spaces. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline in a blaze of orange, Elena met Lila at their usual spot, a cozy bistro in Greenwich Village with exposed brick walls and candlelit tables. The air smelled of garlic and fresh bread, a balm against the day's grit. Lila arrived fashionably late, sliding into the booth with a bottle of red under her arm. "Rough day?" she asked, pouring generously. "You look like you wrestled a girder and lost." "Worse." Elena recounted the falafel, the suggestions, the brush of his arm that had left her reeling. "He's everywhere, Lila. Supporting, caring, like he's reading my mind. And I felt it again. That spark. But how do I let it in without getting burned?" Lila sipped her wine, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Listen, he's making moves, sure. The food, the fixes, It's classic atonement playbook. But remember the playbook that got you here? The blind trust, the lies he swallowed whole? Be careful, Elena. Open the door a crack, let him prove it with actions, not just gestures. For you, for Sophia, but don't hand him the keys yet. You've built this life on your terms. Don't let nostalgia rewrite the rules. Elena nodded, advising a cool cloth to put on fevered skin. You're right. He's a risk I can't afford to miscalculate. But seeing him with the crew today, stepping up without ego, it's tempting. Like glimpsing the man I married. Tempting is the trap, Lila warned gently. Test the waters, but keep your feet dry. And if Vivian rears her head, because she will, you two against the world, yeah? Call me. I'll bring the wine and the whistle. They clinked glasses, laughter easing the knot in Elena's chest. As they parted ways under the street lamp's glow, Elena walked home through the cooling night, the city's energy mirroring her turmoil. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and a text from Marcus said, "Great progress today. Dinner sometime? To talk shop. No pressure." She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The invitation dangled, simple yet loaded. A step toward the unknown. Delete, her caution urged. Reply, her heart countered. In the end, she typed, "Maybe next week. Shop only." His response came swiftly. "I'll take it. Good night, Elena." She pocketed the phone, a small smile ghosting her lips despite herself. The tension simmered, a slow burn building heat in the spaces between. Vivian schemed in shadows, but Elena allowed a sliver of possibility in the fragile now. Romance crept in whispers, not declarations, and she would navigate it carefully, one deliberate step at a time. Across the bridge, Marcus set his phone down, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he held. The maybe was progress, a foothold on the cliff face of redemption. He poured a scotch, gazing out at the twinkling lights, Sophia's photo now a fixture on his desk. For her, he vowed silently for Elena. The path was thorny, but he would tread it, earning back what he had lost. As midnight approached, Elena slipped into bed beside her sleeping daughter, Sophia's small hand curling around her finger in sleep. The touch grounded her, a reminder of stakes far beyond fleeting sparks. Tomorrow brought more beams, more blueprints, more of him. She would face it head-on, walls high but not impenetrable, weaving caution with the quiet thrill of what might unfold. Thunder rumbled in the distance as the first fat drops of rain splattered against the half-built hotel facade, turning the construction site into a slick mosaic of steel and shadow. The afternoon had started with deceptive calm, the sky a bruised purple over Manhattan. But now the storm unleashed its fury, wind whipping through the open framework like an angry specter. Elena dashed from the trailer to the central scaffold, her jacket pulled tight against the chill, blueprints tucked under her arm. The crew had scattered hours earlier, heeding the weather alerts, leaving the site eerily silent save for the escalating patter on tarps and the groan of cables straining against the gale. She needed to secure the sample fixtures before water ruined them, her mind racing through contingency plans even as fatigue tugged at her edges. 4 weeks into this tangled dance with Marcus, the tension had thickened into something palpable, a current humming beneath every exchanged glance and clipped directive. His gestures had escalated subtly, a reserved table at her favorite Italian spot for a working lunch, where talk of load-bearing walls veered perilously close to memories of shared plates in Tuscany. A late-night email with resource links that arrived with a postscript about Sophia's latest drawing, sent via Lila as intermediary. Elena had allowed these incremental breaches, telling herself it was for the project, for the daughter who now asked innocent questions about the tall man in photos mommy kept hidden. But denial frayed at the seams, her nights restless with dreams of his hands, his voice, the life they might have salvaged. She reached the scaffold, rain now sheeting down earnestly, soaking her through to the skin. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the skeletal beams in stark white. And she cursed under her breath, fumbling with the ties on a velvet drape. Footsteps splashed behind her, heavy and urgent. "Elena, get down from there, it's not safe." Water streaming down her face, she turned to find Marcus emerging from the shadows, his coat billowing like a cape. He had a tarp in one hand, determination etched in the set of his jaw. "Go back to your car," she called over the roar, stubborn pride flaring. "I can handle this." Not without me.
He climbed up beside her, the structure shuddering under the onslaught, and together they wrestled the fabric into place, his body shielding hers from the worst of the downpour. Their shoulders pressed close in the confined space, breaths mingling in the wet air, and for a moment the storm faded, replaced by the heat radiating from him. His hand steadied hers on the knot, calluses rough against her chilled fingers, and she felt the jolt, that forbidden spark igniting low and insistent. They descended in silence, rain pounding relentlessly, the sight transformed into a labyrinth of puddles and blurred outlines. Elena led the way to the relative shelter of an overhanging beam, the partial roof offering scant protection. Water dripped from her hair, plastering her blouse to her skin, and she shivered, arms wrapping around herself. Marcus shrugged off his coat, draping it over her shoulders without a word, the wool heavy and warm with his scent. Cedar and rain, a combination that twisted her insides. "Why are you still here?" she demanded, voice sharper than intended, the moment's vulnerability fueling her fire. "The crew's gone, projects on hold till morning. You don't need to play hero." His eyes met hers, dark and stormy as the sky. "Because I can't leave you out here alone. Not again. Not after everything." The words cracked open the floodgates, old wounds surfacing amid the fresh deluge. Elena stepped back, the coat slipping slightly, her control fraying like the edges of the tarp above. "Everything? You mean the way you believed her poison over my word, signed away our vows like they were yesterday's trash? I was pregnant, Marcus, carrying your child, and you didn't even ask for the truth." He flinched, rain tracing rivulets down his face, but he held his ground, voice rising to match the thunder. "I know, God, I know now, and it guts me every waking hour. I was arrogant, scared of losing control. Vivian played on that, fed me just enough doubt to make me blind. But I searched for you, Elena. Months later, when regret hit like a freight train. Private investigators, old contacts, even drove by our apartment like some pathetic ghost. She blocked it, hacked emails, and spread rumors to throw me off. I thought you'd vanished because you hated me, deservedly." Lies, she spat, but doubt flickered in her chest. The revelation a bitter pill. "You expect me to believe that? After 3 years of silence. Sophia asked about you last night, you know. Drew a picture of a family with a blank space where daddy should be. And I had to smile and say, he's far away, working hard. Because that's what you left me with." Marcus closed the gap, his hands gripping her arms gently, thumbs brushing rain from her sleeves. "I never stopped loving you, not for a second. The divorce was my cowardice, not indifference. Seeing you now, fierce and unbreakable, building empires while raising our girl alone, makes me want to beg on my knees, but I won't. I'll earn it. Every look, every touch, if you'll let me." The plea hung between them, raw and electric, the storm mirroring the chaos in her heart. Elena searched his face, inches away, the blue of his eyes fierce through the haze of water. Rain plastered his shirt to his chest, outlining the strength she remembered too well, and something snapped inside her. Fear, longing, fury, all colliding in a tempest of their own. She surged forward, crashing her lips against his in a kiss born of desperation, hands fisting in his collar to pull him closer. He responded instantly, a groan rumbling from his throat as his arms banded around her waist, drawing her flush against him. The kiss deepened, hungry and unyielding, tongues tangling in a dance of reclaiming what was lost. Rain poured over them, cold and relentless. But his mouth was fire, searing away the years of ache. His fingers threaded into her wet hair, tilting her head for better access, and she melted into it, legs weakening as heat pooled in her core. It was messy and urgent, tasting salt and storm, a collision that drowned out the thunder. But as quickly as it ignited, reality intruded. Elena broke away, gasping, her palms pressing against his chest to create distance. "No," she panted, voice trembling with the aftershocks. "We can't, not like this." Marcus leaned his forehead against hers, breath ragged, eyes squeezed shut as if in pain. "Elena, I still love you," she confessed, the words tearing free like a dam burst, soft against the roar of the rain. "That's the worst part. It never went away, just buried under the hurt. But I'm terrified, Marcus,
of believing again, of letting you in only to watch you shatter us. Sophia can't survive another heartbreak, and neither can I. He cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones, his touch tender now, reverent. I understand, more than you know. Take the time you need. I'll wait and prove it day by day. No rush, no demands, just us, rebuilding slowly. She nodded, stepping back entirely, the coat clutched like a lifeline. The rain eased to a drizzle, the storm retreating as abruptly as it had arrived, leaving them drenched and exposed. Elena shrugged off the garment, returning it, her fingers lingering on his. Go home, she said quietly. We'll talk tomorrow. Dry. He smiled faintly, sorrow and hope warring in his expression. Tomorrow, then. Be safe. As he vanished into the gloom toward his car, Elena lingered under the beam, the sight's silence pressing in. Her lips tingled, body humming with unresolved fire, mind a whirlwind of confession and caution. Love is admitted, but trust is a fragile thread. She gathered her scattered blueprints, the paper sodden but intact, and made her way to her own vehicle, the wipers slashing rhythmically against the windshield as she drove into the neon-blurred night. Unseen in the shadows across the street, Vivienne lowered her umbrella, her sleek raincoat doing little to shield the venom rising in her throat. She had come on impulse, drawn by a tip from her planted mole in the contractor's office, hoping to catch Marcus alone, to whisper fresh doubts into his ear. Instead, she witnessed the kiss, that raw surrender under the downpour, and jealousy coiled like a serpent in her gut. Her binoculars trembled slightly in her grip, and the image burned into her retinas. Elena, triumphant and tangled in his arms, stole what was rightfully hers. Vivienne slipped into her chauffeured sedan, the leather seats cool against her heated skin. As she pulled out her phone, the city lights streaked past, a blur of indifference. Fingers flying over the keys, she composed a message to an old ally in the design world, hinting at irregularities in Elena's past bids. Sabotage, subtle and sharp, to tip the scales. They think they've won, she murmured to the empty car, a predatory glint in her eye. But storms pass and vipers strike in the calm. Back in Brooklyn, Elena arrived home to the soft glow of the apartment. The sitter already tucked in Sophia, and her small form curled around a storybook. She paid the woman quietly, then sank into a hot shower, steam clouding the mirror as water cascaded over her. The kiss replayed in endless loops, Marcus's taste lingering, his promise echoing. Love, she had said aloud, the admission freeing yet frightening. Lila would demand details tomorrow, her no-nonsense counsel a bomb, but tonight, Elena allowed the vulnerability, tracing her lips with tentative fingers. Dressed in worn pajamas, she slipped into Sophia's room, perched on the bed's edge, to watch her daughter sleep. The girl's chest rose steadily, no wheeze from the asthma tonight, a small mercy. You're my brave girl, Elena whispered, brushing a curl from her forehead. Well, figure this out, together. Across the river, Marcus stripped off his soaked clothes, the penthouse echoing with solitude. He poured a stiff drink, staring out at the storm-cleared skyline, the kiss a brand on his soul. Her confession fueled him, a beacon in the dark. He would honor her boundaries, patiently court her, and dismantle Vivienne's lingering webs one thread at a time, for the woman who never stopped loving him, for the family he ached to reclaim. As the clock ticked past midnight, the city settled into uneasy peace, the stormy kiss a pivot point, emotions laid bare under heaven's wrath. Tension unresolved, but ignited, promising tempests yet to come. Elena drifted to sleep with his name on her lips. The future a canvas wet with rain, ready for bold strokes. The morning after the storm dawned crisp and unforgiving, sunlight slicing through the lingering haze over Manhattan like a scalpel exposing raw nerves. The construction site hummed back to life with amplified urgency, crews swarming the girders to assess storm damage and push toward the looming deadline. Elena arrived at first light, her hair still carrying the faint scent of rain, her mind a tangle of resolve and residue from the kiss that had upended her world. She had barely slept, replaying Marcus's promise in the quiet hours. But work demanded focus. The hotel lobby framework stood resilient, velvet drapes salvaged and rehung, but a subtle wrongness prickled at her instincts as she inspected the newly delivered shipments of quartz countertops for the bar area. The crates loomed in the delivery zone, labels pristine, but her stomach dropped when she pried open the first with a crowbar. The slabs inside gleamed with an off hue, veins of impurities threading through like cracks in a facade. She hefted a sample, ran her fingers over the surface, and felt the telltale give, the material too soft and brittle for the load it would bear. Inferior knockoffs, swapped in transit or at the warehouse, a sabotage disguised as a supply chain glitch. Chaos rippled outward instantly. The lead mason shouting delays, subcontractors milling in confusion, the project's timeline fracturing under the weight of this unseen blow. Elena radioed Marcus without hesitation. Her voice clipped over the static. "Get down here, now. Something is wrong with the quartz." He arrived in under 10 minutes, his SUV screeching to a halt amid the gravel, face set in grim lines as he vaulted from the driver's seat.
"What happened?"
he demanded, striding to her side, eyes scanning the opened crate like a battlefield general. "Counterfeit materials." She thrust the sample into his hands, watching his jaw clench as he tested it himself, tapping it against a steel beam with a dull thunk instead of the resonant ping of quality stone. This could collapse the entire bar installation. Delays, costs, lawsuits, the works. Someone tampered with the order. Marcus's gaze darkened, a storm brewing behind his blue eyes. "Vivienne, it has to be her. She's been too quiet since that text last week, the one gloating about the meeting." Elena nodded, the pieces slotting into place with sickening clarity. The woman's jealousy had festered into action, her schemes evolving from whispers to wreckage. They moved as one then, a synchronized force cutting through the pandemonium. Marcus barked orders to halt all installations, quarantining the suspect crates, while Elena rallied her design team to source emergency alternatives from vetted backups. But beneath the crisis management, a deeper alliance was forged in the heat of necessity. His hand grazed her lower back as they pored over manifests in the trailer, a steadying touch that spoke volumes without words. She leaned into it fractionally, the gesture a silent pact. "We face this together." By midday, the site's pulse had steadied to controlled frenzy, but the sabotage demanded reckoning. Elena traced the shipment logs on her laptop, cross-referencing invoices with warehouse confirmations. An anomaly jumped out. A rerouted truck from a shell distributor, IP logs from the ordering portal showing access from an unfamiliar address. Marcus pulled up his records on a second screen, his fingers flying over the keys. "Look at this. The digital signature on the alteration request matches a proxy server I flagged months ago. One Vivian used to intercept my emails during the divorce mess." Elena's blood ran cold, but fury followed swiftly. "Record it. Everything." She grabbed her phone, activating the voice memo app as they dissected the trail. Timestamps aligning with Vivian's known schedule, email headers forged but sloppy under scrutiny, even a grainy security cam still from the warehouse showing a gloved figure overseeing the swap, blonde hair escaping a cap, proof piled like ammunition, each fragment a nail in the coffin of the woman's schemes. "We take her down," Elena said, her voice steel wrapped in silk. "Not just for us, but for the project. But smart, no rash moves." Marcus met her eyes, admiration flickering alongside the shared resolve, like a team of Avengers. "You lead, I'll back you." The high point of the chaos crested that afternoon when the head contractor, a burly veteran named Rocco with a mustache like a broom bristle, stormed into the trailer waving a clipboard. "This is bullshit," he growled, face reddened from the sun and frustration. "My guys are idle, clock ticking, and you're holding everything for some fancy rock? I got deadlines breathing down my neck, and if this blows the budget, it's on you, Vasquez." Elena rose slowly, her posture unyielding, channeling the fire that had carried her through single motherhood and corporate gauntlets. She met his bluster head-on, stepping close enough that he had to tilt his chin up. "Rocco, listen carefully. Those materials aren't just subpar, they are dangerous. One wrong pour and your bar counter buckles under a crowd. We are saving your ass and the projects by catching this now. You want to point fingers? Start with the distributor who greenlit fakes. I have the logs, the IPS, and the work. Push me, and I'll loop in the clients, the inspectors, maybe even OSHA. Or work with me. Reroute to my backup supplier, get premium quartz airlifted by tomorrow, and we shave a day off recovery with overtime bonuses on me. Rocco blinked, the wind deflating from his sails as her words landed like precision strikes. He rubbed his neck, glancing at Marcus, who nodded subtly from the corner. All right, you're the boss on design. What do we do? Elena outlined the plan with crisp efficiency. Isolate the bad batch for return, accelerate the alternate order, and double-check all incoming for tampering. By the time Rocco lumbered out, barking renewed vigor to his crew, the crisis teetered on the edge of containment. Elena exhaled, slumping against the desk, the adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. Marcus was there instantly, a steady arm around her waist, guiding her to the chair. You were magnificent, he murmured, crouching to her level, his hand covering hers. Turned that bull into a team player without breaking a sweat. Team effort, she replied, but a small smile tugged at her lips, the warmth of his proximity a balm. We make a hell of a duo when the chips are down. As dusk painted the skyline in bruised purples, they escalated the fight beyond the sight. Seated side by side at the trailer table, laptops synced, they compiled the dossier, screenshots, audio logs of suspicious calls Marcus had intercepted, even a timeline linking Vivienne's movements to the sabotage points. Elena drafted the report to the police, her lawyerly precision from the divorce days shining through. At the same time, Marcus added financial angles, tracing funds to a dummy account tied to her inner circle. Non-negotiable, he said firmly, as they hit send on the anonymous tip line, followed by a formal complaint to the NYPD's cybercrimes unit. We expose her fully, no half measures, she's poisoned enough. Elena sealed the envelope with the physical evidence packet, addressed to the precinct. Agreed. This ends her interference, legally, cleanly. Investigation starts tonight, and by week's end, she'll be too tangled in red tape to touch us. The alliance solidified in that moment, not just against a familiar foe, but in the quiet synergy of their strengths. Her sharp intellect, his unyielding resources, woven into an unbreakable front. As they stepped out into the cooling evening, the sightlights flickering on like stars in the urban firmament, Marcus paused, turning to her. Thank you, Elena, for trusting me in this. Thank you for letting us be us again, even in battle mode. She searched his face, the vulnerability there mirroring her own guarded hope. It's a start, she said softly, squeezing his hand before releasing it, one victory at a time. Word traveled fast in the city's underbelly. By evening, Vivienne's phone lit up with alerts from her contacts. Whispers of a police probe, questions about warehouse dealings, auditors sniffing at her ledgers. She paced her opulent apartment overlooking Central Park, silk robe swirling like smoke, her composure cracking for the first time. The kiss she had spied had been the spark, but this was a conflagration. Elena and Marcus united against her, their evidence a noose tightening. She poured a trembling glass of Merlot, plotting counters, alibis, but doubt crept in, the thrill of control slipping away. Detective Ramirez scanned the package under fluorescent light at the precinct, her partner's eyes widening at the IP trails. Solid case, she noted, forwarding to forensics and tampering with construction materials. That's felony territory. We'll pull her in for questioning by morning. Back home in Brooklyn, Elena arrived at Sophia's excited chatter about a finger-painted rainbow, the domestic normalcy starkly contrasting to the day's drama. She scooped her daughter up, inhaling the sweet scent of crayons and innocence, Marcus's text buzzing in her pocket. Evidence filed. You're a force. Dinner tomorrow? All three of us? She typed back, yes, neutral ground. Progress. Across the divide, Marcus reviewed the police confirmation email in his penthouse, a quiet triumph settling over him. The sabotage was thwarted, the alliance was born, and the path to redemption was more straightforward. Vivienne would face justice, her shadows banished, leaving room for light to filter in. As night deepened, the city thrummed with secrets unveiled, the hero duo standing taller, their bond reforged in the fires of adversity. The project surged forward,
unbreakable now, mirroring the tentative mending of hearts long fractured. The cafe on the corner of Bleecker and Mott hummed with the subdued rhythm of a late autumn afternoon in Greenwich Village. Sunlight filtered through the fogged windows, casting a golden haze over scarred wooden tables and the murmur of patrons nursing lattes and laptops. The air carried the rich aroma of freshly ground espresso beans, mingled with the faint sweetness of pastries cooling on wire racks. Elena deliberately chose this neutral ground, far from the construction site's steel and grit, where words could cut deeper than tools. She sat at a corner booth, her fingers tracing the rim of a porcelain cup, steam rising like unspoken tensions. Marcus sat beside her, not across, his knee brushing hers under the table in a subtle show of solidarity. The dossier lay between them, a slim leather folder stuffed with printouts and USB drives, evidence compiled like a prosecutor's brief. They had spotted Vivian when she entered, her entrance a calculated swirl of designer wool coat and stiletto confidence. Blonde hair swept into a flawless chignon, makeup impeccable as armor, she scanned the room with the poise of someone accustomed to commanding attention. But her eyes, when they landed on the pair, betrayed a flicker of unease, the first crack in her veneer. She approached with measured steps, sliding into the seat opposite, her smile a blade wrapped in silk. "Marcus, Elena, to what do I owe this delight?" Her voice dripped honeyed sarcasm, but her gaze darted to the folder, curiosity sharpening her features. Elena leaned forward, her posture straight as an architect's line, voice calm but laced with steel. "Cut the act, Vivian. We know about the quartz swap. The proxies, the warehouse drop, the forged orders, it's all here. Every digital footprint leads back to you." Vivian's laugh tinkled like breaking glass, forced and brittle. "Accusations from the scorned? How original. You have no proof, darling. Just paranoia from a failed marriage and a petty rivalry." Marcus deliberately opened the folder slowly, sliding a stack of documents across the table. Proof enough. IP logs from your assistant's laptop, timestamps matching your calendar entries, even the security footage with that telltale blonde strand. You didn't cover your tracks as well as you thought. This isn't just sabotage, it's criminal endangerment. Lives could have been at risk on that site. Vivian's composure wavered, her manicured fingers drumming a staccato rhythm on the table edge. She scanned the top sheet, color draining from her cheeks as the implications sank in. "Police reports," she murmured, almost to herself. "You went to the authorities." Elena nodded, unrelenting. "Filed yesterday. Cybercrimes unit is pulling your devices as we speak, but we're giving you a chance to end this cleanly.
Confess and withdraw any further interference, and we might recommend leniency. No charges for the divorce deceptions either. Walk away, Vivian. Leave us be." The woman across from them transformed instantly, the mask slipping to reveal raw vulnerability beneath. Vivian's shoulders slumped, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, the cafe's warmth suddenly stifling. She glanced around as if the walls conspired against her, then fixed her gaze on Marcus, a plea woven into the pain. "Why?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Why her? After everything I did to make you see." Marcus's expression softened fractionally, not with pity, but recognition of shared history twisted into tragedy. "Vivian, this started with us, years ago. I hurt you, but chose Elena because she was my future, not because you weren't enough. But you let it consume you. The lies, the manipulations. It wasn't revenge. It was destruction." She reached across the table, her hand covering his in a desperate grasp, nails digging lightly into his skin. "Remember Tuscany?" she urged, voice dropping to a husky timbre, leaning forward so her perfume enveloped him, jasmine and desperation. "The nights we stole away, before she trapped you with vows and illusions. I could give you that again, freedom, passion, without the chains of regret. Walk out with me now, leave the baggage behind." The air thickened, the booth's intimacy amplifying the moment into something visceral. Elena tensed, her hand clenching under the table, but she held silent, watching the play unfold like a scene from a forgotten script. Marcus did not pull away immediately, his eyes searching Vivian's face, seeing the woman she had been, vibrant, ambitious, discarded in the wake of his choices. But the seduction fell flat, her touch evoking not fire, but the faded echo chill.
Gently, he extricated his hand, placing it on the table between them, a barrier of finality. No, Vivienne. Those memories are ghosts. What we had was fleeting, built on shadows. Elena is my light, my reality. And Sophia, our daughter, the future I almost lost. You can't offer that. No one can rewrite what you've done. Vivienne recoiled as if slapped, her breath hitching in a sob she quickly stifled. Daughter. The word hung, a revelation she had suspected but never confronted. Jealousy twisted into something sharper, a blade turned inward. I hated you, she admitted, voice trembling now, tears spilling freely down her cheeks, smudging the careful coal. Both of you. He chose her and built a life and a family, while I scraped for scraps of power in boardrooms and backrooms. The messages, the sabotage. It was supposed to break you, make him see the mistake. But it only hollowed me out. I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. For the lies, for the pain I inflicted. I thought control would fill the void, but it just widened it. Elena's resolve cracked at the confession, the raw humanity in Vivienne's breakdown stirring an unexpected empathy. She had imagined this moment as pure triumph, the villain unmasked and vanquished. But here was a woman, flawed and fractured, her villainy born of wounds Elena herself had known in the divorce's aftermath. Isolation, rage, the gnawing fear of irrelevance. Still, mercy had limits. Empathy does not erase accountability, Elena said softly, sliding a tissue across the table. We all carry scars from the past, but yours became weapons. Stop now, seek help, and you can salvage something of yourself. Continue, and the full weight of the law falls. Civil suits for defamation, emotional distress, and property damages. It's your choice. Vivienne dabbed at her eyes, composure fracturing further as she gathered the documents, stuffing them back haphazardly. The gesture was defeat incarnate, her elegance unraveling like a poorly knotted tie. I understand, she whispered, standing on unsteady legs, coat slipping from her shoulders to pool on the bench. I'll disappear, no more games, no more shadows. Tell the police, tell them I cooperate. And Marcus, be happy, you deserve it, more than I ever could. She turned then, weaving through the cafe's patrons with her head bowed, and the door chimed a final knell as she exited into the crisp street. Rain threatened on the horizon, gray clouds gathering like unspoken regrets, but the air inside lightened, the booth suddenly vast without her presence. Elena exhaled, the tension uncoiling from her spine like a released spring. That was intense, she murmured, turning to Marcus, her hand finding his across the table. He covered it with his thumb, tracing soothing circles on her knuckles. It was necessary. Closure, finally. She's human, broken like the rest of us. But she's out of our lives now. The waiter approached then, breaking the spell with offers of refills, and they ordered cake to share. A chocolate torte rich and indulgent, a small celebration amid the ashes. As forks clinked against plates, conversation shifted to lighter shores. Sophia's upcoming preschool play, the hotel's near completion, tentative plans for a family outing to the High Line. Laughter bubbled up, genuine and freeing, the confrontation forging their bond tighter, a weld stronger than before. Yet, beneath the ease, Vivienne's words lingered, a poignant echo. In her sleek apartment later that evening, overlooking the park's skeletal trees, Vivienne collapsed onto the velvet chaise, the weight of confession crashing over her like a wave. She poured a glass of neat scotch, and the burn was a poor substitute for absolution. Regret bloomed, not just for the schemes unraveled, but for the woman she had become. Architect of her own isolation, chasing phantoms of affection long dust. The police call came as she stared into the amber liquid, her voice steady as she offered details, alibis crumbling under truth's glare. Cooperation bought time, perhaps a plea, but the real cost was introspection, the mirror reflecting a stranger starved for redemption. She rose at dawn, packing a single suitcase, booking a one-way ticket to a coastal retreat in Maine, far from the city's siren call.
Therapy sessions lined up, a quiet unraveling of the knots she had tied herself. For the first time, envy yielded to envy of their strength, the love that endured her tempests. Perhaps, in solitude, she could rebuild, not as avenger, but as survivor. In the village cafe's shadow, Elena and Marcus walked hand in hand through the leaf-strewn streets, the dossier tucked away like a buried relic. The confrontation had stripped illusions, bared souls, and in its wake, their love stood reaffirmed, resilient against the gales. Sophia waited at home, oblivious to the battles fought in her name, her laughter the true victory. As evening fell, stars pricking the velvet sky, Elena leaned into Marcus's side, the future unfolding not in perfection, but in honest stitches, mending what time and trials had torn. The project thrived in the days following. Deadlines met with renewed vigor, the hotel rising as a testament to perseverance. Vivian's shadow faded, her absence a quiet grace, the city absorbing her exit like so many stories swallowed whole. Elena felt the shift deepest, the empathy for her former foe a softening of her own edges, a reminder that villains wore faces of the wounded. With Marcus beside her, Sophia is between them, the world aligned, conflicts resolved in the forge of confrontation, and love emerging, tempered and true. The grand opening of the Hudson Horizon Hotel unfolded under a canopy of twinkling stars and the golden glow of Manhattan's skyline, the autumn night crisp with promise. Strings of Edison bulbs draped from the atrium's soaring beams, casting a warm luminescence over the lobby where velvet lounges and exposed brick accents blended seamlessly with the city's pulse. Guests in tailored suits and flowing gowns mingled with champagne flutes in hand, laughter and jazz saxophone notes weaving through the air like celebration threads. Elena stood at the periphery, her emerald gown hugging her frame with elegant simplicity, dark hair cascading in loose waves that framed her composed features. At 35 now, she was no longer the shadowed survivor of 3 years past, but a beacon of resilience, her design firm etched into the city's narrative as the architect of this triumph. The project had risen from sabotage and storms into a masterpiece, its lines clean and inviting, a sanctuary amid the urban frenzy. Reporters from Architectural Digest and the New York Times hovered nearby, notebooks poised, drawn to the structure and the story behind it. A single mother who had outmaneuvered corporate intrigue and personal betrayal to claim her vision. Elena had fielded interviews all week, her words measured yet empowering, speaking of the strength of vulnerability and the quiet revolution of women reclaiming spaces in male-dominated arenas. Whispers rippled through the crowd, painting her as an icon, a testament to perseverance in a world that often demanded silence from the wounded. Sophia clung to her side, a vision in a pint-sized version of the gown, her blue eyes wide with wonder at the swirling adults and the massive chandelier dripping like crystallized rain above. At 3.5, the girl's asthma had stabilized under the specialist's watchful eye, funded quietly by Marcus, her breath steady even in the excitement. Elena smoothed her daughter's curls, heart swelling at the sight. But a flutter of anticipation stirred deeper. Tonight marked more than a debut. It was a crossroads, the culmination of apologies, alliances, and the slow thaw of trust. Marcus navigated the throng with effortless grace, his tuxedo sharp against his broad frame, silver threading his temples, adding a distinguished edge. He had orchestrated the evening's flow, ensuring every detail honored Elena's blueprint, from the custom cocktails named after her sketches to the playlist echoing their shared history. But his focus remained singular, her. Spotting them near the bar, he made his way over, a velvet box tucked in his pocket like a secret heartbeat. Sophia spotted him first, her face lighting up with unfiltered joy. "The tall man," she exclaimed, tugging Elena's hand. "The one who builds big castles." Elena smiled, kneeling to her level. "That's right, sweet girl. And tonight, he's here for us." Marcus crouched beside them, his expression softening into something profound, eyes tracing Sophia's features, the echo of his own in her gaze. "Hey there, little architect," he said gently, voice warm as hearth fire.
You look like you could design this whole place." Sophia giggled, reaching out to touch his lapel, curiosity overriding shyness. "Did you make the lights sparkle?" With a lot of help from your mom, he glanced up at Elena, the look passing between them charged with unspoken vows. "She's the magic." The trio moved to the central dais as the MC called for remarks, the crowd parting like silk curtains. Elena ascended first, microphone in hand, commanding the room into attentive hush. "Thank you all for joining us this night," she began, voice steady and resonant. "The Hudson Horizon is more than stone and steel. It's a story of reinvention, of turning fractures into foundations. In a city that never sleeps, we all chase dreams amid the noise, but tonight, I stand here grateful for the quiet strengths that carried us through." Applause swelled, cameras flashing, but her eyes sought Marcus in the front row, a silent anchor. She stepped aside, yielding the stage, and he took it with measured steps, the box now in his hand. The room quieted further as he cleared his throat, vulnerability etching his features under the lights. 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered because of my own blindness, he said, words carrying to every corner. I betrayed the woman who built worlds with me and walked away from the love that defined me. Elena, you rose from those ashes to create this hotel and embody grace under fire. You fought for your dreams, for our daughter, when I failed you both. Tonight, in front of everyone who matters, I apologize. Not with words alone, but with the life I want to rebuild beside you. If you'll have me." Gasps rippled through the audience, the moment's intimacy amplified by the public stage. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but she held his gaze, the weight of his sincerity a balm on old scars. Marcus turned to Sophia, who had climbed beside him, her small hand in his. "And you, my brave girl, I've missed so much, but I promise to catch up every day forward, with nebulizers and bedtime stories, forts and flights of fancy." Sophia tilted her head, processing, then beamed at him, the word slipping out pure and unprompted. "Daddy." The single syllable hung in the air, a thunderclap of emotion that drew collective awes and sniffles from the crowd. Marcus knelt, enveloping her in a hug that trembled with restrained joy, his shoulders shaking as he buried his face in her curls. Elena joined them, her arms encircling both, the family unit forming in the spotlight like a long-awaited constellation aligning. "I accept," she whispered against his ear, loud enough for only him to hear amid the applause. "All of it. The past, the promises, the future." He pulled back, slipping the box from his pocket, and opening it to reveal a simple diamond solitaire flanked by sapphires, echoes of their eyes, and the sea they once dreamed of. "Marry me again, Elena. Not as the man I was, but the one I've become. For us, for her, for everything we can still build." "Yes," she breathed, extending her hand as he slid the ring on. The fit was perfect, and the moment was eternal. The crowd erupted, cheers cascading like confetti, reporters scribbling furiously as flashes captured the kiss that followed, tender at first, then deepening with the passion of reclaimed time. His lips claiming hers under the chandelier's glow. They broke apart to Sophia's delighted clap, the girl sandwiched between them, oblivious to the grandeur, but attuned to the love radiating outward. As the jazz swelled into a celebratory swing, the family descended the dais, guests converging with toasts and embraces. Lila appeared from the fringes, eyes misty, pulling Elena into a fierce hug. "You did it," she murmured, "all of it. Icon status achieved." Elena laughed, the sound free and full. "Couldn't without my squad." Speaking of Vivienne's case, it is closed today. Plea deal, community service, restitution to the project. She's out of our orbit for good. Lila nodded, glancing at Marcus, who scooped Sophia onto his shoulders for a victory lap around the lobby. "Good riddance. Now, go live your happily ever after." The evening unfolded in a blur of dances and dedications, Marcus twirling Sophia under the lights while Elena fielded questions from a cluster of journalists. One from Vogue leaned in, recorder extended. "Ms. Vasquez, your story has inspired so many. From divorce to this dazzling success, what message would you share with women navigating similar storms?" Elena paused, glancing at her family across the room. Marcus, catching her eye with a wink,
That strength isn't absence of fear, but action despite it. We fall and fracture, but we rise, designing our horizons. Support each other, lift the lost, and remember, our narratives are ours to rewrite. The article hit stands the next week, Elena's face gracing the cover under headlines like The Architect of Empowerment. Her words quoted in think pieces across the web. Invitations flooded in. TED Talks, panels on female leadership, mentorship programs for single mothers in the arts. She embraced it selectively, grounding the whirlwind in mornings with Sophia at the park, evenings with Marcus poring over blueprints for their next venture together. A community center in Brooklyn, spaces for families like theirs. Vivian's shadow had dissolved into legal footnotes, her plea ensuring distance, a quiet exile to therapy and reinvention, far from the city's glare. Whispers in elite circles painted her fall as cautionary, but Elena harbored no malice, only relief. The threat ended, and the air cleared for growth. Months blurred into a rhythm of domestic bliss laced with ambition. Marcus relocated his office closer, mornings starting with coffee and Sophia's crayon masterpieces, evenings ending in tangled sheets where apologies evolved into affirmations. Sophia's first daddy day at preschool brought tears to his eyes, her backpack swinging as she dashed to him, the asthma flare-ups rarer under vigilant care. Elena watched from the doorway, heart full, the ring on her finger a constant reminder of forgiveness forged. One crisp spring afternoon, as cherry blossoms dusted the High Line, the family strolled hand in hand, Sophia skipping between them, chattering about her latest fort design. Marcus squeezed Elena's fingers, pulling her close for a stolen kiss amid the petals. "We're really doing this," he murmured. "You, me, her. The whole messy, magnificent life." She leaned into him, the skyline stretching endlessly before them. "We are, and it's just the foundation. Imagine what we will build next." Sophia tugged them onward, pointing to a distant spire. "Look, a new castle for us." Laughter echoed, binding them tighter, the future a canvas vast and vibrant. In the city of endless reinvention, their story arched toward horizons unbroken. Love the truest architecture of all. Elena Vasquez Hale, icon and mother, wife and visionary, stepped forward unafraid, her family the cornerstone of every dream yet to rise.